Welcome to Garage Gym Athlete Ask Me Anything. It's pretty simple. I'll be answering questions from the thousands of athletes that follow our daily programming. If you have a question or topic you want submitted, go to garagegymathlete.com/AMA. Let's get started. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Jared Moon here, and welcome to another Ask Me Anything. So today comes from Marco. He's asking about intermittent fasting and specifically with our training. So if you're watching this and you are using our training, we do have a bunch of different tracks. So you could be shred track, hard to kill, strength. There are a lot of different goals in our track. So it would really mimic almost any other type of training that's out there. So I think this the response to this question would be helpful for most people. And I'll try and provide some things I've seen as a coach and what we've seen at Garage Gym Athlete, but also some of my own anecdotal experience. So he's asking about intermittent fasting, how it could maybe be a benefit for a Garage Gym Athlete in our training, or how it could be a detriment. So, how could it hurt you? What are some of the common pitfalls? I started intermittent fasting many years ago. To be honest, I don't really remember who turned me on to it. It wasn't as popular as it is now, but it was mentioned to me, and the main reason I wanted to pursue it is blood sugar regulation. So I had a really bad problem after I would exercise, whether it almost didn't matter the type. It could be high intensity exercise, it could be a really hard strength workout, but I would end up extremely shaky. My hands would be shaky, and I would even start to feel a little bit sick if I didn't consume basically sugar. I needed sugar. So I was very dependent on that. Getting into hypoglycemia, whatever the case could be. I was never examined by a medical professional or anything like that. So I don't know what the underlying cause was, but I did have it recommended to me to try intermittent fasting to try and get rid of some of those jitters. So I did. And to be honest, intermittent fasting for me was very difficult at first. So I started with a 16-8. So this is also called time restricted feeding. People in the fasting world are very particular about what you call what. So time restricted feeding is where you have an eating window and then you have a fasting window. Very popular one is 16-8. So 16 hours in which you do not eat throughout the day, and then 8 hours in which you would eat. There's also 18-6, 24, all these other different options that you have. And then straight intermittent fasting would be 24, 48 hour, water only fast, things of that nature. And they all have different benefits. But the main reason I pursued it, and I like for people to know this, was not because I read some article about muscle building and mTOR, or because I was, looking for the next performance gain. My real reason for pursuing it had to do with blood sugar regulation. And like I said, it was very hard at first, but the longer I did it, the less challenging it became. And that problem completely vanished several years ago, into which I have no issues with blood sugar regulation. Another thing that used to happen to me is I would get really hangry. So if I went long periods of time without eating, I would get mad. A lot of people have tempers when they don't eat. That's kind of completely vanished for me. No longer how long it's been without eating. And I still do this today. I still do intermittent fasting. I typically am doing a 16-8 or 18-6. Now, there is a lot of science kind of backing intermittent fasting. I'm not going to get into as much of it. You just have to know that most of the science out there has been done on mice. Now, there's a ton of anecdotal evidence. I don't really have a problem with anecdotal evidence depending on where it comes from and what they're saying. Obviously, it's not as concrete. Like what I just gave you is anecdotal evidence. Maybe that helps you, maybe it doesn't, but it could lead you down a different path and something that's worth trying. So there's a lot of good science out there. People like to throw around the word like autophagy, so killing off bad cells and all this other stuff. But, I don't see a lot of good science on that. Again, not a lot of human trials out there, and also there's not even a fantastic way to measure autophagy. And so, I'm not a huge fan of throwing around these big terms that, to be honest, I don't fully understand, and I'm not going to pretend like it's a huge benefit for you. If you want to follow anybody's work, the two people I recommend, Sachin Panda, he has a really good book, The Circadian Code, I believe it's called, and then also Peter Attia. Dr. Peter Attia, he's really big into this stuff, and I think they both kind of lead the way on providing information. Another thing that has really helped me, the reason I continue to do it, has nothing to do with performance. It's energy balance and cognition. So I know when I am fasting, I have an extreme mental energy throughout the day. And I also don't have these big ups and downs with energy. And that used to be a big problem for me as well. I'd hit that afternoon lull or whatever, and that's kind of disappeared as well for me. So the whole reason I still pursue it to this day has everything to do with cognition and energy balance. I have very stable energy throughout the entire day. Now, getting to the athlete, some pros and cons. So what we typically recommend athletes starting out with is a minimum 12-hour if you've never done this before. So try 12 hours. There's a lot of potential benefit and very little downside to fasting. So I do recommend everyone try it and see how you feel, especially if you're having any of these issues I'm talking about, or you'd like to maybe benefit from increased cognition. Give it a couple months, see how you like it, or even a couple weeks and try it out. But what you want to do, at least 12 hours, see how that goes for you. And then from there, we would step up to a 16-8 is our normal recommendation. And we like for people to start fasting and then train fasted into their fast and then eat, because we don't like to skip the post-workout meal around here. It's not a big thing it's not a big thing we'd like for you to cut out, because we find that a lot of people's diets, it's hard enough for them to get that dialed in. So I don't want you to also screw up the post-workout recovery by just not eating at all. And so that is typically what we recommend. If you can train in the morning, train fasted, and you kind of, the idea or theory behind that is dumping those glycogen stores and then going and eating after that, refilling glycogen stores, all these things. So that is our main idea and what we like to do. That's what I do if I'm training in the morning. Now, if I am training in the morning, which my schedule fluctuates throughout the year, that's what I do. So, but I won't necessarily adhere to a strict 16-8 if I'm doing that. So what I'll do is I'll stop eating pretty early in the evening, and then I train. I don't train at like 5 a.m., training more at like 7 a.m. After that training session, I'll eat. So sometimes that will be 16, sometimes it'll be 17, sometimes it'll be 14 or 13. So I'm not real strict on how long my fast is, because I think the post-workout recovery meal is more important depending on how much time is there. If it's just another hour, not a big deal, but I don't want to exercise and then wait 5 or 6 hours to be able to have my first meal. I don't like the idea behind that. And so that's one thing that you could do. If you're eating in the afternoon, then it gets pretty easy. Then you could stop eating at 7 p.m., start at 11 a.m., or you start eating at 11 a.m. and then train whenever in the afternoon, and things should be fine in an 8-hour eating window there. Now, the only other thing I have to, we haven't seen any negatives with fasting in our athletes other than, 2 cases. One, females. If you are breastfeeding, postpartum, anything like that, this can get a little bit more complicated of an answer than I can provide now. So if you start noticing things that are hormone related, skin problems, especially like if your period were to stop or something like that, you wouldn't want to be doing this at all. You don't want to shock your body into such a starvation mode that it's starting to freak out. We've seen that with female athletes who are kind of burning the candle at both ends. So don't do that. Don't worry about fasting if you're suffering in other areas. There is hormesis, this hormetic stress, which is good. So what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. That's very true in fasting. It makes your body more resilient. But too much of that stress will break you down and be a bad thing. So females, really pay attention to where you're at in your life and what you're facing hormonally, and make good decisions based off of that. And if you feel like you're having any problems from a hormone standpoint, then I would stop fasting. I wouldn't continue it. And the other, as we see, is athletes, this can happen in male or female, is just under-eating and under-recovering, not thinking it's that big of a deal. And these things take a long time, because if you're only 300 or 400 calories short a day, it's not going to be the next day or the next week that you're going to see this huge recovery detriment. It's over time. So if you can't fit in the proper amount of calories and nutritional density in your eating window, and this just goes on, then your body's going to start getting broken down. You'll probably get sick more often. You might get injured. You might not feel the same. So just be very mindful that if you are going to do intermittent fasting, that you have a plan to fit all of your calories in that eating window. Some people think that's all the magic behind fasting, is that, people shorten their eating window, and then they also don't eat enough calories, so they're losing weight because they're not eating enough calories. I think there's a lot more to it with, like I said, hormesis, blood sugar regulations, hormones. There's a lot more going on with fasting. I think that's a very nearsighted view to say something like that. but I do think that if you are under eating, you're going to be under recovering, and you're not going to be in a very good position. So I think it's great. I think athletes should give it a try, because if you're in it more engaged mentally, which is, like I said, my main thing now is cognition, your motivation's higher. You don't have these energy lulls. You're more in the game every second throughout the day, and that's what I want. I want that for my family. I want that for my fitness and my performance. So that helps me a lot. So don't discount being in the game mentally, which is my biggest pro for fasting. But don't think it's going to be this miracle thing that's going to, cure cancer. There are claims that it cures cancer. There are claims that it's going to cure diabetes, all these things. And a lot of other people like Jason Fung are putting out information on things like that. You can check him out as well. But there's a lot of great information, and I think that we're really at the beginning of how big this will be. But that's it for this Ask Me Anything. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel and give me a thumbs up. Let me know any comments. And if you're listening to this to the podcast, leave us a 5-star review and positive comment. Thanks for watching. We're listening. I hope you enjoyed today's Ask Me Anything episode. So one more time, if you want to submit a question, topic, or idea, you can do so at garagegymathlete.com/AMA. And hey, while you're there, if you haven't already, sign up for Garage Gym Athlete membership. We are the best community and programming on the internet. I dare you to try and prove me wrong.